give tzedaka, but he does it. It's a mitzvah in the Torah of fear of God, but he's not a generous person. He's not a generous person who shebetiva who kili. In his nature, he's stingy. He gives because he's afraid not to give. God's going to punish him if he doesn't give. So he gives, but in his nature, he's stingy. So he said like this. So on one hand, it's a midah beinonis. He gives. That's why he's called an average. He's not a tzaddik. He's not a rasha. Because he gives. But he doesn't give with a good heart. So he says, he concludes, others say, because by his nature, he's a stingy person, even though he gives tzedakah, it's a midas dom. And the Rabbi Yonah actually continues on that thread. The Rabbi Yonah in his sefer, they think it's a Musa sefer, but it's known that it's a halacha sefer too, in the Shah Gimel, where he so briefly runs through the mitzvahs, and to find out the mitzvahs and Averis. He has a very interesting, the Chinuch, the Sefer Chinuch said the same thing. It says two mitzvahs in the Torah with regard to giving tzedakah. Nos and titnulo, you should give to him, and don't feel bad. Your heart shouldn't feel bad. You don't feel bad when you give it to him. So the Rabbi Yonah explains, why the Torah say means it's a mitzvah in the Torah to teach yourself not to be stingy, not to begrudge people things, and to be, to the contrary, to be a gracious and giving person. It's not enough just to give him, just like he writes in Pirkei Avot. It's not enough just to give him, but we have to implant ourselves to be givers, to be gracious people. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. The next mitzvah, he continues again. As the Torah says, don't harden your heart and don't close your hand. Don't close your hand. So he says again that we should work on ourselves not to be cruel people. You can give tzedakah for many different reasons, but not because you feel any empathy, any sympathy for the poor person. So the Torah again teaches not enough to give tzedakah. You got to give tzedakah. It's not an excuse not to give it, but at the same time you've got to teach yourself empathy. You have to see to have rachmanos, not to see an unfeeling. A person comes and tells you a whole story, and sometimes, parenthetical remark, one of the Gedolim said sometimes you give tzedakah to get rid of the person. He's got such a heart-rendering story that he's making you feel bad. Right? You don't want to feel bad. So you give him the tzedakah not for him. You give him the tzedakah that you shouldn't feel bad. You want to get him out of the house. Sometimes people come in, they really have heart-rendering stories. So you want to get rid of them. That the Rabbi Yonah says you got to listen to him and feel for him and develop a midah of rachmanas. Further, the Rambam says, it's the last one, too much technical. The Rambam says, actually a famous Rambam. The Rambam says, it's in Perek Shlishi, Mishnah Tesvav, in Ovad, where Hakol Lefi Rov Hamaisa. The reward is by the quantity, how much you do, how often you do it, not necessarily how much you do. And the Rambam says that it's important. The Rambam says over here, the Amma, Shahamailas, the great degrees of perfection, not by the quantity of his maisa, but how often you do it. L'rov mispah hamaisim. So it means like this. The Rambam says it's better. I always say when I preface this, you got to teach yourself to give $100 and $200 and $1,000 too. But the Rambam says to give 100 times, 200 times, $1 develops the person more than if you give $100, $200 once. Get it over with, you got $100. You're in shul and the guy comes, one guy and a second one and a third one and a fourth one and a fifth one. By the 10th rate, enough. Atkan. Right? So No, you give the 11th, you give the 12th, you give the 13th. You teach yourself Nedivus by Rov HaMaisa, how often you do it, but not by the quantity. Because at one time doesn't change the person. Doing it over and over changes the person. I added to this, I'm going to see a little bit more. If you have a person that gave not 100 times, but 1,000 times, and he didn't give 1,000 times $1, but he gave 1,000 times $1,000 and 5,000 and 10,000 and 50,000, you know what kind of heart the person develops? He's got such a generous heart that it's beyond belief. Just little things that happened. I was in Cleveland 2 Shabbos ago. Somebody sits down next to me. He actually learned now Kollel. Then he went into teaching, and they cut down the staff of the school, so he got laid off. His wife was working, but it got very tight with cash. So somebody went and made an appointment with Moshe Reichman. This was, from the way he told it over me, this the Motzei Shabbat before of Slichat. A Bayas Slichat, not where you start from a study. We start like the week before Rosh Hashanah. So he tells him, make me a schedule of your expenses, and come back next week. Motzei Rosh Hashanah, he comes back to him, and he gives him this piece of paper, and the first thing he looks at it, he said, no, he said, you're not living off this is much too little. You know, that's not you cut back on it. This is not, you can't live on this. You're spending more money than this. He thinks a little bit. He says, you know what, it's for Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot now. Let me give you a check. And we'll take care of it now. You know, down the road, we'll see what it'll be. Takes out a check, writes it out, fills it, gives it to him. The fellow walked into his car. There was a check for $20,000. 5 would have been nice. 10 would have been generous. 20, he almost didn't know what to do with it. He flew home. He didn't drive home. The heart was so big from all doing it over. I have an incident which also part of that, an amazing story. You know, as far as I know, you have many customs in Minhagim. I come from Germanic background. The Yekis also have their Minhagim. One of the Minhagim is that by a bris, the sandik pays for the Suda. The sandik pays for the Suda. That's, it's a German minute. Moshe Reichman, he liked being sandik. So by one of my sons, I was mechaber with sandikas. But he didn't pay for the Suda. By the bar mitzvah, look how the man kept got. 13 years later, he comes to say Mazel Tov, and it says, hey, by the way, you people have a minute that the sandik pays for the Suda. You know, maybe I should pay for the bar mitzvah. You know, if you know my nature, I said, you know, Moshe, don't pay. I was kidding with him. I said, I'll pay the bar mitzvah, you pay the chasna. 10 years later, the son came over to me with an envelope for $25,000. He paid for the chasna. You understand what kind of person he was? Not only the money at that time, $25,000, were not a humongous amount. This was when they were riding high. But to remember, and I didn't say it seriously. I said as a joke, if you give chasna a few thousand, bar mitzvah, a couple of $1,000, you pay the chasna. I said strictly as a joke. The man was a prince. And there's stories and stories. Somebody just told me in 92, when they started having their problems, they combined classes in Yisrael Torah. So 5 Rebbe's got laid off. They all found jobs in Lakewood and other places. A few weeks later, comes a letter in the mail with a personal check, not from Olympia York, from Paul Reichman, a certified check for $55,000. A year's salary. Like normally when you throw somebody out, you give them a year's salary. They didn't have money. You say that Terry still doesn't have money. Maybe yesterday they had a dinner. Usually they don't have money. So he paid all 5 rebellion. That was already when they weren't riding high. Sent all 5 of them a check for $55,000 each. That's what was due to them. The heart that he got was unbelievable. I'm not talking, I said by the Levaya, the sums of money that went out. On a Motzei Shabbos, I went with a representative of the yeshiva in New York. We got the $250,000 pledge. A half an hour later, another community activist came with somebody, got another $250,000. It's a regular Motzei Shabbos. Somebody told me, he said in there, Rabbi Adas from Park Yosef, he had a yeshiva, and he owed $450,000. So he went to Rav Shach. Rav Shach said, you got to close up the yeshiva. I mean, you can't bankrupt 100 people because you want to have a yeshiva. He said, you know what, go to America. Go to America. Maybe in America he had a terrible time. He did not know Moshe Reichman. Somebody told him, why don't you go to Mr. Reichman? So he went to Mr. Reichman. So they talked. He told him everything. Gave him a check for $500,000. With his way, he said 450 is to close up the old yeshiva, pay off your debts, and 50 is to start the new one, start it over again. His heart was, and we're going to get to the end why he was that way. But the money was able to give, and he redefined philanthropy with that. Even though, and all was done, a lot of it was done with I said by the Levi two incidents. He davened in the Kollel on Yom Kippur. He got an Ali in the morning. He said, Moshe Reichman made a pledge for $360. $360. I meet him in the hall later. He says, tell me after Yom Kippur how many how many Kollel people there are in the Kollel. I want to give each one $1,000 bonus for Sukkot. So I thought it was 25, 30 in the Kollel then. He could have made a Moshe Reichman. I'm giving $25,000. Right? 360. Nobody had to know that he was giving every young man. That's that Hatzner Leches that nobody had to know about. I mentioned, and also one of the Panovich of Rosh Hashivas, Rav Shmuel Rozovsky, was ill with cancer, and they sent him to America for one of the hospitals in Boston, and they ran up a bill there for $60,000. So the former Talmidim went to make a collection. One of them came over to Moshe Reichman. He had also learned in Panovich. And I don't know what he answered. He didn't give a non-committal answer. That Sunday, he flew to Boston to be Mavaka Chorla to visit the Rosh Hashiva. On the way out, he went to the cashier and paid the bill. He could have told these people that came to him, nice if you it's all right, I'll take care of it. Well, and he was with them, I don't have to go around and collect, I'll take care of it. Nobody has to know what he's doing. They found out. How did they find out? When he came to pay the bill, they told him it was paid already. Somebody came by and paid it. Everything was without people knowing about it. The other thing is, he always came, did you know, that anybody came in to collect, he put on his jacket. I once sat with him, not collecting. I was in the house, and he forgot to put on a jacket. And the lady got up, he apologized. Put on a jacket. He sat down with every person as if it was the first time that he was listening, how many Talmidim, how many in the light, what are you doing, raising. 5-10 minutes he would speak to him. He heard the story 1,000 times. Everybody thought this is the first time he's hearing the story. It's such an interest. The Derech walking him to the door, those are things, incidentally, that we can learn from him. The Hatzner Leches, to do things modestly, not for publicity, to treat. I came home from the Levi at 12:30. My wife said, no, what did you learn? What you learn? The wives are the ones who know what you got to learn. So she said, when the guy comes 3 times during supper, the driver comes, the first one knocks on the door in the middle of supper, got to give him some money. You sit back down, you just picked up the spoon, the next one knocks on the door, right? By the third one, you're not smiling anymore. My wife said, learn from Moshe Reichman, don't put on your jacket, but smile at them when you give them the money. We have to learn things from it, right? We go and say it by the end. But we have to learn from, say, you can learn the amount of money we don't have, you can't learn. But the way it was given with the interest and the courtesy and the way the people were treated, that we could learn from him. In Mishle it says, Tachnunim Yedaber Rush. A poor man, Tachnunim, he begs, he comes, he beseeches, he asks. V'osher Yana Azes. A rich man answers with arrogance. That's human nature. Mishle Shlomo was human nature. For a man who was not just rich, but he was super wealthy, he was an amazing person. There was no arrogance there. Unbelievable. His son, Barry, the older son, said he never heard his father raise his voice. I don't think my children could say they ever then he had a year that they didn't hear me raise my voice. Never heard him raise his voice. He never heard him say anything negative about anybody. Never heard him say anything negative about anybody. The daughters said over that at the table, Shabbos, if they would start speaking about a classmate, he would get up and leave the table. He didn't say anything, but he knew when Tata got up and walked off the table, that was a machar. They have to change the subject. Didn't say anything. got up, and they were wondering why he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. They knew that when he got up, that was a protest of what they were speaking about. Amazing. That's for a regular person, that's unbelievable meters. But for a person that's wealthy, the Shlomo Melech told us what the nature of wealthy people is. That's super special. He was a super special person. Yeah. There's there are two things I want to say about this. That in all the years, he never mixed into the running of institutions. Not this business. I'm a businessman. I'm a supporter. The Rosh Yeshivas, the Rosh Kollel, they got to run their institutions. In 40 years, he called me once. Somebody came collecting Rav Moshe Reichman, the Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, the Mashgiach in Lakewood, that sent him to raise money for something. I don't know what it was. He came by, we schmoozed a while. He went to Moshe Reichman. After he left the house, Moshe Reichman calls me up. Pay attention, it's once in over 40 years. He said, call up Lakewood. I hold what this fellow is collecting for as a Chilul Hashem, to collect money for that. I made my name. I met the fellow the next day. I told him, how was he going by Moshe Reichman? He's such a beautiful person, wonderful person. He was so nice to me. He had no clue that what he was collecting for, not that he didn't hold of it, that he didn't think was him. He held it was a Chilul Hashem to collect for it. I said, did he give you money? Yeah, he gave me a $5,000 check. The fellow didn't have a clue whatsoever that he didn't at all agree with what he was collecting for, to the point that he had was a Chilul Hashem to collect. That's the only time in all the years that he ever told me, call up an institution and tell the heads of the institution, I feel that you can't collect for that. So it must have been to him a terrible thing. Nevertheless, the person who collected didn't have a clue, not a clue whatsoever, that he didn't open what he was collecting for. I told this to his son-in-law. His son-in-law told me there's a Yid in Eretz Yisrael. He must have some kind of an institution that he doesn't know why. He said, I don't want to see that man's face. I don't want to see a man's face. He got $100,000 a year from him for whatever he was collecting for, and he thought that Moshe Reichman was his best friend. We have what to learn from him. Not giving the quantity of the money. We don't have that to give. But the way it was given and the character the Midas told us, there's a lot to learn from. Rabbi Palm told me there's an institution for Russians in New York, Shuvi Yisrael. His father was very involved in that. Moshe Reichman had built him a brand new building. A few days later, a 14-year-old yeshiva bach in New York decides he wants to do something good for the community. He's going to Toronto to collect for shul. Look, goes to shul, he knocks on two, he wants to try Allenwood. Moshe Reichman opens the door, what are you collecting for? He said, collecting for shul. So it's surprising. He smiled at him, and he said, I just finished putting up a new building for them. He didn't give him money. Shabbos, he saw him in shul. He went out of his way to go over to him. He asked him where he learns and what you do and what he wanted to make up for him, to make him feel good. In other words, not that he disregarded you because you're not a person that is worthy of some kind of attention, but I just built the building. So he went and schmoozed with him a while to show interest in him, that he should feel that he had an interest in him. Instead of the beautiful behavior that we can learn from. Mm-hmm. This I said it before. On top of everything, the money never defined him. I want to tell you a story. Rabbi Yaakov, our Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov said over that a wealthy person in New York told him that before the stock market crash in 1929, listen carefully, he was worth $35 million. You figure out what this is today. Half of them are $500 million. After the crash, he was worth $5 million. It's $100 million today. Not for him, his children, great-great-grandchildren. He seriously contemplated suicide. The Yid told him that he seriously was thinking about suicide because his value had gone down from 35 million to 5 million. You know what the explanation of that is? If the guy would have lost use of 80% of his body, couldn't move his hands, he couldn't move his legs, they would understand he might want to commit suicide. The money so defined the person that when he lost 6/7 of his money, he lost 6/7 of his metzias. He lost 6/7 of himself. So then we understand he's contemplating suicide. It never defined him, the money. Money was never him. That's why he wasn't devastated when they lost it. That's why he was able to give it away. It's important to learn. We get so caught up in money that the money starts becoming the beginning and end of everything. It starts defining the person. You know, I have money, he's a good, he's a rich brother. It's a commodity. It's a commodity. Money is a commodity. You can buy things with it. You can do mitzvahs with it. You can do good things with money. You can support yourself, support your family, also mitzvah. But money would never define them. It was a commodity. So that's why not only wasn't he devastated when he lost the money, but secondly, it was easy for him to give it away. We're now giving away his lifeblood. You know, sometimes you go to a rich man and you ask him for a large donation. He wants it, he can't. It's like you're asking him to give 2 pints of blood. He can't. But it wasn't his mitzias. That was not him. So he was able to give it away. One more thing. He was a baal achrayus. He was a man of responsibility. Before they were very wealthy, when they started the cheder, the Soda Torah, somebody acquired what it was then. If they needed paper, he got paper. They needed this, they needed that. So he was also a person with responsibility. And that manifested himself later when he had money. He felt responsibility to do things with that money. He felt responsible to help institutions, especially the ones who had hard time raising the money. He felt responsibility. He's also always a person of responsibility. I've finished with Pirkei Avot that says, Kol haberech nakavod. Listen to the question. Anybody runs away from kavod, the kavod chases him. The kavod chases him. The question is, when does it ever catch up with him? He's always running away from the kavod's chasing him. When does it catch up? When does the kavod catch up with him? When does the honor, when does the recognition, the respect come up with him? So somebody said, when he dies, he can't run anymore. That's you see. When he can't run anymore, the kavod catches up with him. All of a sudden, you see all the good things he did in his life. He doesn't need it. In that world, he's sitting somewhere in a nice place, and he's getting reward for what he did. The kavod that's a benefit from him is the kavod that he gets for the midah tovos he had, and for the personality that he was and that he developed. If we learn from that, that's a kavod for him, and that's a schutz for him over there also. So just to run through a little bit, very briefly, the gave it always with a seva panim yafot. He always gave it with a smile, even when he didn't believe in it. The person who received it didn't have an idea that he didn't believe in it, and it was done with modesty, with no fanfare, and it was done. As I say, he was courteous and gave respectfully to everybody, and achrayus, he felt responsibility for the community. You know, you don't only live for yourself, you live for other people too.